All right, let's dive into a pretty surprising connection, the one between your digestion and one of your most vital organs. We're about to peel back the layers on a biological process you think you know, and what we're going to find could totally change how we look at treating kidney disease. It sounds a little weird, right? What does your dinner have to do with kidney failure? But the answer actually uncovers this hidden communication network inside our bodies. Think of it like a metabolic information highway that starts right in your gut, but has huge consequences for your kidneys.
And yeah, the link is bile. You heard that right. We usually just think of it as, a digestive aid, something the liver cooks up to help us break down fatty foods. But what cutting edge science is showing us is that it has this crucial and way more sophisticated second job. So let's get into this secret second job. Bile is so much more than just intestinal soap. The little molecules that make it up, these things called bile acids, they're actually powerful hormones carrying really important messages between our organs. So here's the key thing to get. Bile acids are basically a language our organs use to talk to each other. They're made from cholesterol, and then they travel through the body, telling different tissues how to manage energy, how to control inflammation, and just generally how to stay in balance.
Now, this whole conversation happens along what scientists call the gut-liver-kidney axis. A great way to think of it is like a constant three-way conference call that, when it's working right, keeps our entire system just humming along perfectly. And it's an incredibly efficient loop. So the liver makes the first batch of bile acids. Then our gut bacteria get to work and modify them. Then, and get this, over 95% of them are recycled right back to the liver to be used again. Only a tiny fraction gets cleaned out by the kidneys. That's the healthy system in action. So what's really cool is how these messages are actually received. Our cells have these different docks or receptors for different kinds of bile acids. You can see here some receptors are way deep inside the cell's nucleus, and they control our genes. Others are on the cell's surface, managing energy. It's like having different keys that unlock very specific and very different doors in the body. Okay, so what happens when this really elegant system breaks down? Well, when chronic kidney disease, or CKD, enters the picture, that beautiful communication highway gets jammed up with a whole lot of static. The trouble really starts in the gut. In someone with CKD, the buildup of toxins creates this hostile environment, what's called a uremic gut. The bad bacteria start to take over, the intestinal wall gets leaky, and this is critical. The good bacteria that are supposed to be modifying the bile acids just can't do their job properly anymore. Scientists have a name for this. They call it a failure of the remote sensing network. What it means is the liver and kidneys are just not getting the right signals from the gut anymore. Instead of clear instructions, they're getting total gibberish, and that kicks off a really dangerous feedback loop. So what happens when those messages get scrambled? Well, instead of helpful signals that keep everything in balance, the body gets flooded with toxic ones that actually start causing damage. And this chart, wow, this just illustrates the core problem perfectly. In a healthy person, these toxic sulfated bile acids are just a tiny fraction of the total. But in patients with CKD, they can make up 60% of all the bile acids in their blood. Why? Because the failing kidneys just can't clear them out anymore. And look, this isn't just a chemical change in a lab test. It has devastating real-world consequences. A major study found that high levels of certain bile acids were a powerful predictor of who would progress to end-stage kidney disease and who was at a higher risk of dying, period. But this is where the story starts to get hopeful. I mean, if the problem is a communication breakdown, then what if we could learn to speak the language of bile ourselves and actually fix the signal? The new therapeutic strategy is, well, it's beautifully simple, really. We know from research that in kidney disease, these key receptors like FXR get turned down, they get downregulated. So the new goal is to develop drugs that can go in and just turn them back on. And the early results are incredibly promising. In a recent trial, a new drug designed to flip these FXR switches back on showed a significant gain in kidney function for patients. The numbers you're looking at on the screen, that represents a real, measurable improvement in their health. And this isn't just a one-off finding. Another study looked at patients with diabetic kidney disease. As you can see in the chart, after just 1 year of treatment with a specific type of bile acid, they saw a really meaningful improvement in their overall kidney function. So all of this is pointing toward the future of treatment, which looks to be a combined strategy. It's not just about one thing. It's about activating the right receptors, restoring the health of the gut, and using things called adsorbents to clean up the toxic mess that started the whole problem.
When you think about it, the story of bile acids shows us that deep inside our own biology, there are all these hidden conversations happening all the time. And by learning to listen to them and maybe even join in, we can find revolutionary new ways to understand and treat disease.